Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This one is for Until Daylight from Flyos Games. It is a zombie survival game, but it's unlike a lot of the ones you may have played already.
Yep, it is 3 to 6 players. You are trying to survive for 10 rounds in this game. Purely cooperative. The idea or the goal behind the game is to find one of the survivors in this massive deck of awful infected beasts and raiders. There are 5 survivors hidden in here, and it is your goal as a group to use the cards in front of you to search for equipment in these abandoned buildings and try to get as much stuff as possible loaded onto your character. So by the time combat comes around during each round, you have enough equipment to survive these massive hordes that are going to be laid out in front of you.
Yeah, the game is broken down into 2 different phases, but like Jeremy said, to win, we have to find a survivor, survive all 10 rounds at least, and clear the board of all of the creatures that have been revealed.
Yep. Each player is going to choose one of the different possible antagonists. I have the Psycho in front of us, or in front of me. When you look at this, there's a couple different things you need to pay attention to. At the top is the leadership value. This is who is going to be in charge as the group leader for that round. There's a huge benefit to being the group leader, and that is that you get to double whatever your advantage is. Each of these different characters has their own advantage and their own drawback as well, according to which character that you're playing. So when you have the advantage and you're the group leader, you double that value, whatever it is. So you want to be the group leader when possible, and in order to be the group leader, you have to find experience that is hidden throughout the different decks in the game.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of different ways to get experience. There's some on the cards, there's some for doing things in the game, but this is kind of representative of that dash of ego that comes into play when you're all surviving a zombie apocalypse, where people are vying for leadership, people are taking that position from each other.
On the very bottom is going to be your health track. Everyone has a different amount of health that they go into depending on which character that you're playing. If any of the characters that are participating in the game die, you lose as a group as well. So you have to make sure that you keep the other players alive at the table. Also attached to your very specific character, you're going to have one particular card you start with. I start with the Psycho Knife. These have infinite ammo built into them. They're either melee weapons or they're ranged weapons. Some of the weapons in the game require ammunition, which you'll have to rifle through the search deck or the rubble deck in order to find.
Yeah, for example, I have the Haggler gun. This is my starting weapon. It too is infinite, so this will never be discarded. However, I need ammunition or gun ammunition to use it. And that's something that you're going to be finding in the rubble deck, which we haven't talked about, but the whole game revolves around the rubble deck. We're frantically going to be searching through this just like you might imagine you would, searching for things really quickly in the first phase of the game.
Also, each player is going to have 3 different objective cards that are specific to them. These are one of the main ways to gain that experience that we talked about previously. Also, each player is going to draw 2 secondary objectives at the start of the game, and they're going to pick one of them. This is something else that they can try to accomplish through the course of the game in order to gain that experience in order to gain the group leader token.
Yeah, you're also going to see some dice in the middle of the table. There's 2 different types of dice here. These black ones are the combat dice. Those will come into play in the second phase of the game. And then there's the fate die here that basically you're going to roll before combat, and it gives each combat a slightly different flavor. It might add another creature to the lineup, or it might take one away. It might heal you, it might damage you, things like that.
Speaking of the different creatures, there are 4 base types. You have your monsters, your wanderers, your raiders, and then your brutes. And then, of course, hidden in this deck are the survivors as well. These all have different types of values on them, whether it's experience that you get from trying to kill them, the type of dice that you have to use in order to hurt them, and their special abilities as well. So this is what you're trying to kill through the course of the game.
Yeah, the interesting thing about them too, they're broken into 2 different categories. Like Jeremy said, there's the raiders, and then all the rest of them are various types of monsters. The raiders are going to attack in a very different fashion than what we call the infected, which are the other creatures in the game.
Also, you have the 2 different types of barricades and traps. These are going to do 2 very different things for you in the game. The barricades are going to stop incoming damage, and the traps are actually going to do damage to the monsters, and those are built, again, with the rubble cards. There's a way to, on the back of your cheat sheet, to combine different types of cards in order to build these structures to place in front of you so that when the horde does come, you have a little bit of protection against them.
So we haven't explained much about exactly what you do and how you do it. we've told you you can search rubble. You can use some of that rubble to build things. But have we mentioned that you do that within a time limit?
Yeah.
So you're going to set a timer. The game actually has an app that you can download that has the timer built into it, that has some ambient music and things like that. Or you can use a sand timer or whatever you have. But you're going to set that timer for the search phase, and the search phase is the first of 2 phases.
This is all about reflexes. Each of the players at the table, starting with that leader, whoever the leader should happen to be, is going to, as soon as the timer hits start, you're going to say go. And then that player is going to do one of many different actions. Probably the most common action is to take one of the cards from the top of these 2 rubble decks, look at it, announce to the table what they got, shotgun shells, and then decide what they want to do with this card. Now, each player in front of them has an invisible 10-card limit tableau in front of them. Those cards can be junk or masks or weapons or whatever it happens to be. They can place this card in front of them, adding to that 10-card limit, or throw it away into the discard pile. Now, the ammo, which are your shotgun shells, your gun ammo, your arrows, all of those things can stack on top of each other. So they only take one of those inventory slots. But it's then that everyone's reflexes are on edge. You have to, it's like searching a building. Like you have a horde coming after you, you're constantly frantically searching, and you want to get around the table as many times as possible before that timer runs out. But that's just one of the different actions you can take during the search phase.
Yeah, that's the perfect example, what Jeremy just mentioned, where imagine you're in a building looking for things and the zombies are breathing down your neck. And then finally one guy says, oh, hold on, I'm going to build a barricade. And everyone's like, no, hurry, we need to search more rubble. That's effectively what happens here, because in addition to searching for rubble, you can use some of the cards you found to build things. You can use combinations of cards to build barricades, to build traps, and then additionally, you can actually trade cards.
Yeah, so on your turn, instead of drawing a card from the rubble, you can actually give a card to somebody. So if I notice that David has the shotgun, I can say, I have shotgun shells. My turn is giving you this card.
Right.
The other thing you can do is take a card from somebody, but you have to have consent from that player
Exactly.
that you want to take something. So if I have a bow and arrow in front of me, and I see that David has a whole line of arrows, I may say, give me those arrows, please. And he'll say, of course, yes, since it's a cooperative style game. The last thing that you can do is to actually use one of the cards in front of you. There's many cards that are one-time instant cards. You use them and you throw them away. For instance, this lucky card here, but there's a variety of them that allow you to do something during that action phase. Again, this is all timed, and it's super frantic. And before you allow the other player to do anything, you have to finish your action 100%, whatever it is you're doing, before you're allowed to say next. So if I say I'm going to build a barricade, I can't just say I'm going to build a barricade next. You have to actually take the cards, get rid of them, pull that to your side, and then say next.
Right.
So you got to do it frantic.
Yeah, you cannot take your turn unless you heard the person on your right say next. So it becomes pretty tense, and you only have 1 minute for all of that phase.
Yeah.
And then once that 1 minute is up, this is kind of the interesting thing. It's a bit of a hot potato, if you will. Yeah. When that timer goes off, whoever hasn't said next and it's their turn, they're going to receive the zombie horde for that round.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of the combat phase. That person is, unfortunately for them, going to take a number of creatures off the top of this deck equal to the number of players plus the round number.
Yep.
So in the first round, for a 4-player game, you're going to take 4 plus 1. There's going to be 5 creatures. We have 5 creatures here in front of the pillar character. You're going to take these off and keep them in the exact same order, splay them out so you see how they're ordered. And this becomes very important as you approach the creatures.
Because this is the combat phase, and during the combat phase, you actually have to attack these creatures in a left or right fashion. So if an entire round is done, and this is the situation at the end of the round, these will stay here, and you're going to build onto these through the course of the game. So your horde can be gigantic by the end of a round or by the end of the game. When you attack, you're simply going to look at the equipment in front of you. Now, the first player that has the opportunity to attack this is always, of course, the player who ended that round. So Pillar there is going to have the first opportunity to use whatever equipment they have in front of them to roll dice. There's a maximum of 6 dice that you're going to be able to roll in any given round. That's completely dependent upon what kind of weapons that you have in front of you. Of course, Pillar has her own bat, and that allows her to roll 3 dice. So she's going to take 3 of the black dice. And she can modify it, again, that in any way she has with the cards that she has in front of her. She's going to take those dice and she's going to roll them up, trying to get very specific faces on the dice. Now, these dice have 3 different types of faces. You have the body shot, you have the headshot, and then you have the X in front of you.
Which is, unfortunately, as you may have guessed, a miss.
Yeah.
But the body shots are going to do, you have to get 2 of those to do a damage. And when you do a damage, you simply take the creature out of play. Or one headshot's going to do the same thing. It's going to take a mix of these different things for the different variety of creatures that you'll face. But effectively, you're not typically going to be able to take out all the creatures sitting in front of you. No way, no how. But everyone around the table is going to get that opportunity. So once the first player is done with their turn, the next player gets to do the same thing. Now there's some different rules here because you're going to be attacking from a distance perhaps with a distance weapon. You can run over there and melee them, but there are some things that can happen because, for instance, the Wanderer, if you go in and attack with a melee or a ranged weapon that's not, say, a bow and arrow, you're going to bring maybe some of those Wanderers over. So for instance, if you see here, we have 2 Wanderers. If they went and didn't kill any of them, and then it was my turn, and I actually killed this Wanderer with, say, a shovel or a gun, I'm going to discard that. Then this Wanderer is actually going to come over to my horde. So if it wasn't clear, we're all going to have hordes in front of us by the end of the game.
Yep. Also, you have the opportunity to do collateral damage to the other players that you're trying to assist. If you're using any of the ranged weapons, you have the opportunity, depending on what you roll, to hurt the other players. So you have to be very careful about the dice that you're using and the items that you're using to assist those other players. And again, you're going to go around the table, everyone trying to assist that particular character to destroy that horde that's in front of them. Once the combat phase is done, we actually go into the enemy attack phase.
Yeah.
This is when the enemies are going to attack the players. Each individual horde is going to attack in clockwise order, starting again with that same player. So anything that is left in front of that player is going to attack that player. Then the next horde will attack the players attached to them all the way around the table, and they use their own set of combat dice in order to do things.
Yeah, and even this is interesting because not only does the order of the cards matter, but the type of cards. This is when this comes into play. Because first and foremost, the raiders are all going to attack first. These are basically other human survivors in the world that are looking out for themselves. They want to steal everything they can, so they're going to attack first. You're going to look at the whole horde in front of you, count up the number of raiders, and a raider is going to attack with 2 dice. So say there's 3 raiders, I'm going to take all 6 dice, roll for the raiders against me, and that's the damage they're going to do. Now here's the interesting thing about the raiders. The raiders are going to not only do damage against you with the body shots and the headshots, but every time they do, they're also going to steal one of your rubble cards, so you have to discard one of your rubble cards. And if they get an X, which is typically a miss, they're also going to do collateral damage and kill a survivor. Now, the other interesting thing is typically all the damage that comes at you is going to first kill survivors, then your barricades, and then into you. So that's your line of defense. Unfortunately, the survivors are human shields at times, but not with the raiders. The raiders don't target the survivors, but they can hurt them with collateral damage.
And your normal infector are going to attack just using the dice that they have in front of them. And again, you're trying to keep your health from getting all the way down to 0. Each of these different players has a different health count. You're going to do that all the way around the table with all the different hordes, and then you're going to start round 2. You're going to keep doing that until you can possibly find a survivor. The whole objective in the game is to kill all of the people around this survivor, take this over to your side, and then survive for 10 rounds, as we said. But again, have no more infected on the board. So you have to have a full round where you've completely cleared the board.
Yeah, you might get a survivor right away in the game. The first round, you could potentially save a survivor, but the game's not over then. You have to survive the 10 rounds and clear all the enemies.
I really think this game really boils down to players cooperating properly. I said this right before we went into this. You have to use that search round the most effective way possible by looking at what other people say, announcing the cards that you have, and then looking around the table to see what people need. I noticed that David has a gun. He needs ammo. He noticed that I have a shotgun. I need shotgun shells. You need the nails and the planks. You need the wires and the explosive for the traps and the barricades. So you have to be really quick on your toes about what people need. There's things that heal. There's things like the mask here that allow you to completely negate melee attacks and people following you. So when we had that example where the Wanderer would follow you, if I have the mask on, that's not going to happen. So maybe I want to have creatures on other players that they're not going to follow me back. So there's some strategy on which kind of items you want to have with which different people.
Yeah, not only that, but you also want to take into consideration your advantages and your drawbacks.
Yeah.
Because like we said at the beginning, the advantages are great, but if you're the leader, you're going to double your advantage. So you can look at that one of a couple different ways. You can say, oh, I want to take advantage of my advantage as much as possible, so I want that leadership. Or you can cooperate and say, okay, who has a good advantage that we really need to utilize this round. Let's get you some leadership and work it in a more cooperative fashion.
Yeah. So that is Until Daylight. It's from Flyos Games, 3 to 6 players. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, go check out their Kickstarter, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.